All right, perfect, perfect. Well, Brother Jared, I appreciate you hopping on this call with us. And before we even get started, as far as the details of everything, like we talked about before we started recording, I do want you to introduce yourself for all the pastors and stuff that watch the video. I want them to know who you are, how you kind of got to where you're at, and what y'all are doing. So you can go ahead and take away.
Right on. So my name is Jared Ballou, and I started a church in Newcastle, Pennsylvania. And the way we got here, it's kind of a long story, but I grew up in Michigan. I grew up in ministry. My dad was in missions work for a lot of years, and my father-in-law was a pastor. And we actually 17 years ago helped them start a church in Shipshewana, Indiana. And so my wife and I, like I said, I grew up in Michigan, so I was living in Michigan, working with my dad in ministry. And then we kind of came off the road for a bit there, and then my father-in-law was going to start a church, so we moved there um, to Indiana to help them start a church. So we were there for about 13 years, working with them in the ministry, and then the Lord moved us out here to Pennsylvania to take a church. And so I pastored a church here in central Pennsylvania, over near the Altoona State College area, in that region. And then the Lord just really kind of was moving us on, and through a long series of events, one of our pastor friends had mentioned on a prayer call that Newcastle needed a church, and so we just began praying about that, and really took a couple trips over here to Newcastle, and really felt the Lord was moving us here. And so that's the condensed, 30-second version of the story. But Pastor Brian Lott from New Testament Baptist Church um, in Butler, Pennsylvania. His wife is Nikki Lott, so she writes a lot of music, and so some people would know Brian Lott, some people would know Nikki Lott, some would know both. But they're just a great couple, great family, and that was our sending church. And he was the one who mentioned Newcastle on a pastor's prayer call, and so he grew up in this area. He grew up in Butler, but Newcastle's about 40 minutes from there, and he pastored about 20 minutes south in a town called Bessemer, and tried to reach Newcastle, but just found it hard to get people to come down there.
Yeah.
And that far. And so anyway, yeah, so we prayed about it for a little bit, and really believed that the Lord wanted us to start a church here. So in January of 2024, by the end of January, we announced basically that we were going to be starting a church in Newcastle, put together a nice video, and started deputation from March of 2024 to March of 2025, so about 13 months. We were in 125 churches on deputation, raising our support and funds for the startup. And so, anyway, we started April 6th of this year of 2025, and so we've just had our third service. So our first service, we had 103 in attendance.
Yeah.
23 of those would be us and some people from a couple of other churches in our area, including our church. So 80 people from the community came out for our first service. The second week, we had 72 in attendance, and outside of us, there's only 4 people from other churches that were there, and so the rest of the people were from the community. So we had about 60 from the community for our second service, which is pretty awesome. And then
Yeah.
for Easter, this last Sunday, we had 89 in attendance, and there was only one couple from another church, and then of course us, and then everybody else from the community. So there again, we had about 80 people. If you include our family of 7 and then 2 others, subtract that from the 89. So basically, we had 80 people from the community. And we're just excited. We've had 3 people saved so far in our services, and we're following up on everybody who's come. And we've had just a tremendous response. There's really nothing much here in Newcastle for a good gospel preaching church. I mean, as far as independent Baptist is concerned. So
Yeah.
anyway,
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's awesome. And we planted a church as well from scratch.
right.
And if going back, I wish I would have launched with an initiative kind of like y'all did. We had the motto of, "Hey, we'll knock on doors for a week before we start," and and we didn't know anything about digital outreach or anything back then. But I think we might have had I think we might have like one family from the community visit. So to have 80 first-time visitors from the
Yeah.
community that you're starting a church in, to me, that's just phenomenal. That's
Well,
awesome. And to have them maintain, have 60 the next Sunday
Yes.
from the community. And then, that's,
Right.
to me, that was a great, God really blessed for sure.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, there's a lot of factors involved. Obviously, this area is 55,000 people. So, every area is different with population. Our family is musical. And so we sing, and people really enjoy that. Um, Not that we're great singers, but the girls, all play instruments. So we have an orchestra. We have three violins and a cello for our orchestra, and my wife plays piano. So, it was just, you know, that all helps, put it that way.
Yeah.
And anybody who calls me, I would encourage them heavily to do it in a similar way. I mean, I wouldn't say do it exactly the same way. When my father-in-law started his church 17 years ago, they just went out and had church. There were 2 families, and then we came 6 weeks later, and so, and by the time we got there, there was 1 or 2 other families, but yeah, I mean, it was just, and they had all 3 services, um, and they just went, started the church, and started knocking on doors, but it was a slow process, and we were, I mean, there was a team of us for sure, which is nice,
Yeah.
but it was a slow process. This, we had, um, 425 people come over the course of 6 weeks to hang John and Romans on doors. I think we did about 18,000 John and Romans. We sent out a mailer to 25, almost 25,000 homes. Um, Plus, now we're going back again with door hangers for the second time, and which that started on week 6. We had passed out all the John and Romans, or had gotten all the houses. Um, and we started on that 6th week right before our grand opening, going back with door hangers. And so now our family's continuing to do that. We try to get out several times a week to do that, weather permitting. Yesterday was kind of tough because it was rainy, um, but we did go out a little bit. And so, just trying to get it out there again. But and here's the thing, and I think you had mentioned when we were at your church that, you'd started, Sunday night church and all this, and one lady comes on the one Sunday night, and it's just awkward. And so that's one thing we wanted to avoid is having just one person show up. It's awkward. To get them to come back is difficult. But if you
Right.
start with a big blitz, and I say a big blitz, you're going to start with more people. You'll kind of settle down. I don't know what our numbers will be 6 weeks from now. Um, we may only have 20 people. I have no idea. But
Amen.
I think we've got a decent crowd, to get started. And I think that's just the Lord did it, obviously, but it was just
Yeah.
the work of thousands of people praying, and hundreds of people, boots on the ground helping us, and it was amazing.
For sure. Well, give me an outline real quick, just of kind of the process of it. So I know you mentioned y'all had several people, you're sending church, several different churches coming and helping y'all, passing out John and Romans gospel tracts. Y'all have obviously ran digital tracts as well. Give me a process of what y'all did. From the physical outreach to the digital outreach. When did y'all start giving out flyers? How many people was going out when y'all started, and as it ramped up, as far as even with your advertising, we ran a couple ads for you the months prior. Give us the details of all of that, just for anybody who watches that is praying about planting a church,
Great.
looking forward, might be starting one. Maybe it's in 6 months to a year, and they got plenty of time to prepare, get a strategy laid out.
Great.
Because y'all had a great day. Y'all had, over 100 something, or right somewhere around there. I think a little over 100. You
Yeah,
said 20
103.
something.
Yeah.
Yeah, 20
Great.
something of them was from people, other churches, but you had about 80 to 90 or something from the community.
Great.
And you can, give us some clarity on those numbers in a minute. But like that's a great launch day, and so I want to give everybody the background of how all of that was structured leading up to it. So, give us a little map of
Yeah.
that.
Right on. So, we started deputation 13 months prior to starting. We didn't at that time, we didn't quite have dates picked out and everything, but through a process, talking with Brother Jeremy Rowland from Baptist Church Planners Ministry, they helped us with our launch. They provided John and Romans, or half of them. Another church wanted to do some, so they did half. So we had our John and Romans actually come from two different places. We did 20,000 John and Romans. And basically the start, I mean, obviously you got to put all the materials together, design work and all that, so that took some months to get that done. But in January we launched with you our hope for Newcastle campaign. And that really comprised of two things. We sent out a card, a mailer, a big jumbo postcard that had the gospel on it. And there was a video that we had put together on a website with a landing page so they could go see the gospel presentation, basically of me presenting the gospel. And then they could respond to that. And so it was, the mailer that we sent out, and then also the digital Facebook campaign that we did for basically 2 months, most of January and most of February, that we ran that, and just started getting connected with people, through that. And then the main thrust of what we did was starting in early March. In fact, I think it was March 1st was a first Saturday in March, or March 2nd, 1st or 2nd, something like that. Anyway, we started canvassing the entire area with John and Romans, and it was about the same time. I don't remember exactly. I think it was maybe a week later we started with your um the Facebook Digital Tract campaign.
Yeah,
But
and real quick, I don't mean
yeah,
to interrupt, but just so people know, when that was exactly a month before your launch date, right? Your launch date was April the 6th,
yeah, I think it was like basically 4 weeks.
4 weeks.
So we actually started 6 weeks, or I say 5 weeks ahead of time. So there are 5 weeks in March, and then the first week in April. But the first week in April is when we started. So it was 5 weeks ahead of time. We started doing the door hangers with the John and Romans packet, and a special invitation in the packet. And then we did that for a number of weeks. The first week, I think we had 53 people come to help us with that. And then the second week, it was like 88. And then the third week, it was over 100. So we had 2 or 3 weeks of over 100 people coming. Total was a
Wow.
425 people that helped us hang John and Romans. Now, where we are in Pennsylvania, it's kind of hilly, and there's a lot of areas where, because back in the 70s, 60s, and 70s, this was a big town, and it was a mill town. And so there was a lot of people. In the 70s, when the steel industry pulled out, it really devastated the area. And so there's a lot of spaces between houses. So you might have 4 or 5 houses next to each other. Then you might have a couple vacant lots, and then a house, and then a couple vacant lots. So there's a lot of, there's extra walking. Whereas some areas you may be able to put them on a little bit faster. Plus, we're hilly. And so yesterday I'm doing door hangers, and I'm walking up, 20 steps up to get to the house. And so it takes a little bit more time to do that. But we did get about 18,000 flyers out. And all the while we're doing that, we also had a mailer go out, about 25, it's like 24,700, I think, somewhere in there roughly, flyers that went out. And then of course the Facebook campaign that started about 4 weeks ahead of the church plant. And so people were seeing it over and over again. And so on our first Sunday, which we actually had the week before our launch, we had get acquainted meetings. If you're familiar with Brother Jeremy Rowland and Baptist Church Planners Ministry, they do get acquainted meetings the week ahead of time. So it's Sunday, Monday, Tuesday evening. And so we had people coming out those nights, and then the Sunday morning of our launch. And I had people saying, we've seen you everywhere. And so that was good, because the whole purpose really was to blitz the area so that everyone would be able to see us and know that we're there. And
Yeah,
so, yeah, that's pretty much what we did.
for sure. Yeah, that's awesome. And I should have had this pulled up. I'm trying to pull up the numbers of how many views y'all actually had. Um, from your digital track campaign from your Facebook ads. So how many John Romer actually passed out?
We did right at about
Like the
I
John
don't
and
know,
Roman
we haven't
flyers?
counted, but about 18,000 John and Romans that we put out.
Yeah. Okay.
And the
Awesome.
difference,
Yeah, and I want to
yeah,
say
the
your ad.
difference
Go ahead.
Yeah, the difference between the mailers that we sent out, because that was almost 25,000, and the John and Romans, is just we sent the mailer to rural areas where we weren't going to go. It would be, drive to each door, in more of the rural areas. So we didn't do John and Romans on those doors. We just did it where you can walk and hang them.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, and with your ads, I was just trying to pull it up. For some reason, it wasn't loading due to being on Zoom and recording and stuff. But, you probably, like, easily view wise, your ads probably reached over 20,000 views, probably 30,000, for the
Great.
space of time and the amount of money y'all put into running it. So yeah, it creates just like this omnipresence kind of,
Yes.
atmosphere where people see everybody knocking on doors with flyers from your church. They see you online. And it really just created a presence where just people, know you. And I'm sure there's hundreds of
Right.
people in your community that know who Keystone Baptist Church is. They've
Yes.
seen the
Right.
name. So, but yeah, no, that's awesome. So, give us the numbers. How many, just to refresh it, I know you mentioned a little bit earlier, how many do y'all have total on your launch service, and how many of them can you discern that came from your Facebook ads and that came from your, door knocking? Did you have that numbers, or do you have it about estimate?
Yes, I have a pretty solid what I'm gonna say is a pretty solid number now. I'm scrolling through my phone because I know you sent me at some point the numbers, and I was gonna see if I had the numbers here readily available, but somehow I'm not. Oh, here we go. Um, uh, that was Yeah, it was too early in the campaign. That's okay. So
Yeah.
we had 103 at our first service. 23 were our family and people from our church, and there was one or two other churches represented there as well on our first service. And so 23 people were basically coming to help the church plant, and that includes our family, which there's 7 of us. So then that left 80 people that basically came from the community. Um, I'm trying to remember, I think it was 27 people came from directly from Facebook that signed up
Yeah.
in a plan your visit ad on Facebook.
Amen.
Um, Now, if you include the next 2 weeks, because we had visitors the 2nd week and we had visitors the 3rd week, we had a good strong stack the 3rd week on Easter Sunday. And including I mean, okay, so one lady signs up, she comes Sunday the 1st Sunday, the 2nd Sunday, on the 3rd Sunday, she brings her family, her daughter and, her daughter granddaughter and her granddaughter's husband and their children. So, it was like 6 other people that she
Yeah.
brought the 3rd week, but she signed up on Facebook, that's how she found out about us. Now she probably got a flyer too, but she directly signed up on Facebook. So, including all of that, I counted about 60 people, a little over 60 people that came as a direct result of the Facebook ad campaigns in our first 3 weeks.
Wow. Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah, that's awesome
Yeah.
stuff. I'm trying to think here, like, as far as, um the processes and stuff that y'all are doing. Like, y'all had a great launch, everything, people coming back. What do you think y'all have done to cause people to come back? Have you done any kind of follow-up as far as, like, do you go visit these visitors that came to first service, or was it just they just came back because they enjoyed the service so much?
Yeah, so, we've done a couple things. We are not knocking on their doors. I'm in today's world, and I have talked to a lot of pastors, just to find out, what do you guys do? What do you do? How do you follow up? And, one of the things that we learned, at the pastorate before we launched this church was people are funny anymore, especially since COVID, about you coming just knocking on their door. And so we made a determination that we weren't going to do that first Sunday. I mean, historically, man, we as independent Baptists, somebody comes to visit them, you got a letter in the mail to them on Monday, and Thursday night you're knocking on their door, right? And that's how we grew up, brother, right? And
Yeah,
so I get that. But in today's world, and um I've had pastors tell me, we visit, the first week or two that they came, and then they never show up again. And I mean, you're gonna
yeah,
have some of that anyway. But so here's what we have done. We have taken the system that you guys have through GM Baptist Outreach. And all of our other visitors that have come, we have plugged their names, phone numbers, and email addresses in from the visitor card or the guest card, connection card, I guess is what we're calling them. So we'll take that connection card, and on Monday I plug that in, and then I send out an email or a text to everyone and say, "Hey, thanks for coming. We really appreciated you showing up and all of that." and we look forward to next Sunday, whatever. And so we followed up that way. And I'm trying a couple of different things to see what works best for us. Um, but it seems like people have responded well to that. I've also
Yeah.
sent out a couple emails through that system as well, just to thank people for coming. And then the other thing is just, people just enjoyed the services. We're very upbeat. We sing the hymns out of the hymn book, but we're singing strong, good upbeat songs. And I've had good song leaders the first couple weeks. Last week I led singing because I didn't have a song leader. And so it's just keeping the service upbeat and exciting. Like I said, our family sings, and then just preaching a good Bible message, just
Yeah.
preaching the gospel. We're not, getting on a soapbox about, anything. We're just trying to preach Christ, try to draw people to the Lord,
Yeah.
um, and that type of thing. And so I think that's, the combination of all of those things have brought people back.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, at our church, we used to do the handwritten invitations. Now, I don't visit people either. I'm the same way. Like, if a visitor comes to our church, I've noticed that when I used to do in-person visits afterwards, it was more awkward than anything. They're like, "Oh, I visited this church. Now this preacher's gonna be knocking on my door all the time," you know. And so I don't do that. Yeah, I ain't done that in years. We just, I think, just like you said, the text message thing has worked the best for us. So I'll just type a
Right.
personalized text message to them, send it to them. Say, "Hey, John, yes, Pastor Dalton, just want to let you know, appreciate it." And then I'll try and add their kids' names in there. If you can get your kids' names added in there, it was good to
Mm,
have you and AJ and, Cecilia with us Sunday, and personalize it, and they'll text back and you can kind of start that communication with them. They'd love to take you out to eat one
right.
Sunday or something. So yeah, I think that's great.
Right.
Yeah, that's what we do
Yeah.
too. Um,
Yeah, one thing that we haven't done that I want to do, and part of it is when we created all of our graphic work for the letterheads and all that kind of stuff, we didn't do an envelope, and it was just, I don't know, I missed that. And so I was gonna the first week, I'm like, okay, let's send out a letter to everybody, and then I'm like, wait a minute, we don't have an envelope. And so, but somebody else said they handwrite a thank you note and mail that out.
yeah,
um, Now, so one thing that we want to do, just so that people who watch this, will be clear about this, it's not that we don't want to visit the people. And I was taught that. I mean, that was very much a part of us. However, because of today's culture, it's just different. So what we've determined to do is we'll follow up first with the text messages, emails, probably a handwritten note saying, "Hey, thanks for coming." But then it'll be, after a couple weeks, it'll be more of a text follow up again saying, "Hey, so and so, we would love to visit you or take you out for coffee." And I've had great success with that in the pastorate that, where I was, where, it's just more of a neutral site. People are just funny about you showing up at their house.
yeah,
Um, and so, if you can do something maybe on a neutral site or they're ready for you. So we've already met
yeah.
with people. In fact, I had a guy who wants to do a Bible study. And so we're meeting on tomorrow morning at like 11:15 at Duncan. And he was all excited about it.
Yeah,
And so, just stuff like that. So where they're comfortable, meeting with you until they kind of get to know you. And so that's what we're going to do. I don't know if it'll happen this week or next week, where I'll actually send out a text message and say, to basically to everybody who's visited and say, "Hey, we'd love to come visit you or take you out for coffee," or something like that.
yeah.
And so we'll carefully, craft a text message, to that effect. So,
Perfect. Yeah, yeah, let me know how that goes. That's awesome. Yeah, we
yeah.
have it, and I'll say this real briefly, but, we believe in that connections piece for sure. What we'll do is we'll even have members in our church, we'll tell them that we voted on it, one time that, listen, the church will pay for anybody who takes a first or second time visitor out to eat at some point. And so, like, we have
Mm,
people in the church, that they'll, if they're a family and they look like they get the same age, or they can connect with them, like if they visit 1 or 2 times, like, they'll invite them out to eat. "Hey, can we take y'all out to eat, today after church, our treat," just to get the relationship built, and they'll take them out to eat,
great,
or us, me and my wife will, and yeah, we're probably taking a family out to eat that's visited. It's their third. They've visited twice now, but this coming up Sunday, we'll be taking them out to eat afterwards, and the church will pay for all of it because it's part of the ministry. We want to build that relationship
great,
with them and get
nice.
connected to them. So, yeah, those are all good. Good thoughts. I do feel the same way about the visiting people though at their homes. I think it's that people might have messy homes and now they're embarrassed, so they're never going to come back to church
Yes,
again.
right.
This
Yeah,
pastor's unseen their home. Maybe it wasn't put together like it should be. So yeah. Anyways, I know we've been on here too long. I do want to just real quick before we go, give a little introduction to the digital tracks, and as far as what's your opinions on them? Do you think it's needed for today? One of the reasons we do these case study calls is to inspire churches and outreach in general, because I feel like a lot of churches have this Calvinistic mentality to them today that God's going to bring everybody to our church that they want. We don't have to
yeah,
reach
right.
anybody. God will bring who He wants here. And I think that's just so far from the Bible. It's crazy. But a
Yeah,
lot of churches have that. So we want to inspire churches in outreach that God can still bring people to church. God can still save souls. But we also want to inspire people in digital outreach because, like we talked before this call, a lot of, especially independent Baptists, but a lot of churches are behind just digitally. I mean, when it comes to their website, when it comes to
yeah,
all kind of different things, they're
right.
just behind. And the church is always the last people to actually grab something new that's going on. And digital outreach in general is something that a lot of churches have never done, and they're skeptical about it. And so, as far as you haven't experienced it, we've done it for you several times now with
Great.
digital tracks and paid ads. What are your thoughts on it? Do you think it's something needed for today for churches to do?
Yeah, so actually, let me give you a couple thoughts on that, and I'm glad you asked that question because I'm passionate about this. If you read the book of Acts, you will find the disciples, the apostles went out everywhere preaching the word, right? Um, and they engaged with people out in the marketplace, out in the highways and byways, and we're commanded to go into all the world and preach the gospel to every creature. Now, there are some who say, well, we do that by knocking doors. Well, you can go up to a door, knock on, 10 doors, and one person is going to answer the door. And that's if you're lucky. I say
Yeah,
lucky. That's if, you do it at an optimized time. And I'm not opposed to knocking doors. I'm for it. We do it. We're doing it now. Um, I'm for soul winning efforts, but there's a lot of people that you're not going to reach through that because they're
yeah,
not going to. They might be home. They're not going to come to the door. They're not going to come answer a stranger's door. This isn't the '60s and '70s. It's a different culture. So how do we reach people when they won't answer the door or they're not home? People are busy. They're out doing stuff. We have to reach them where they are. We have to reach them in the marketplace. Where
yeah,
is our current marketplace today? It's not the mall. The malls are dying. You can go street preaching, and you're going to, get very limited success with that. Um, and there's reasons for that. And I'm not opposed to street preaching. I have good friends who do it. I have good friends who stand on the corner and give away Bibles and have had many people saved. And I think that's a great thing. And if you can do that effectively in your area, those are great things. But here's my point. Where is pretty much everybody today? They're on their smartphone. How many
yeah.
hours a day? And they're on social media. And so the idea of having a digital tract will put us in front of thousands more people that would take. I mean, if you do we did a mailer, right? 25,000, almost 25,000. It cost us $8,000 to do the mailer.
Wow.
Well, that's printing and postage. We did every
Yeah,
door direct to mail, and if you add that up, 25,000, I mean, it's like a quarter a piece, but it's costly. Even though it's cost effective, it's costly. Now, here's what I've told pastors because they've asked, well, we sent out a mailer and we didn't have a response, or we have very limited response to it. Some said, we send out a mailer. Every time we send out a mailer, somebody comes, but it's so costly that we can't do it very often. Well, so you pair that with, going out and putting door hangers on because, those are a little less expensive. And then it's the manpower of doing it, which takes time. I get that. But if you do it in your church, so you're doing a mailer, you're doing uh, the, the door hanger, but then you pair that together with, a Facebook, I say Facebook, social media ad campaign, or what you would call digital track. And the combination of that is a winning combination because you're touching everybody. I mean, I have a marketing background. I own businesses for several years, And I will tell you this, it takes 7 touches for people to know that you're there. And
Yeah.
so, I mean, sure, a few people that'll see you and they're looking for it. They're looking for Christ. But when that family has a tragedy in their life, and now there's a death in their family, and they're looking for a church, or that young couple that their baby's on the way, and they're like, we need to get in church. Who are they going to think of? They're going to think of the people who have been in front of them. And so we must go out into the highways and hedges and compel them to come in. How do we compel them to come in? I mean, part of it, sure, is through our life and through our voice, but you've got to be out there more than just, what you can personally be out there. And so I believe very strongly that the digital tract marketing is I mean, it's greatly effective, and we've proven that through our church plant. Like I said, we've had over 60 people in 3 weeks that visited. Now, obviously, we're a new church plant, so you got to take that into account. Um, but over 60 people in 3 weeks that visited our young church directly from the ad campaign.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I agree with you. And it's one of my, I think, pet peeves too. People talk about door knocking. That's biblical outreach. It's like, yeah, that's biblical outreach only because that's all they could do back then. Go to the markets and go door knocking. That's what they
Right,
didn't have internet back then.
right,
If you could
right.
tell Paul, hey, listen, Paul, we could reach thousands of people for $100 a week, he would probably
Yeah,
be like, let's take up a love offering. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
I don't think, Paul would have been against digital outreach or anything like that. I just think, the door knocking and everything, that's all they could do back then. So, yes, I'm for door knocking too. We do it every week at our church as well. But, yeah, I think, that there's so much possibility, really so much opportunity out there for outreach that churches just don't know about or they don't know how to do it. And yeah, and digital tracks is one of them, just the whole digital landscape. There's so much possibility. And like you mentioned, consumers are online. And I use the term consumer from a marketing standpoint. Souls are online. There's just
yeah,
hundreds and
right,
thousands of people online. And when people move to your area, they're not picking up a newspaper. They're not going to their mailbox to see if they're getting a flyer to find a church. If they move to the area, the first thing they're going to do is pull up their smartphone, type in church near me, church in Newcastle, and it's going to be a digital approach to finding a church in the area. They're not going to get a
right.
newspaper, and they're not going to go to their local gas station and ask around. That's just not the way people are today. They
Yeah.
go to the internet. And so if you want to be found by the masses in your area, then you just need to get online. You need to use the internet. And so anyways, well, I enjoyed the call. I appreciate you hopping on. Is there anything else you'll say before we go?
I think we're good. I think I said it all. Maybe a little too much. So
Awesome.
we'll leave it at that.
Yeah, no, you're perfect. You're perfect. I think it was great. Well, I appreciate you, man. Appreciate what y'all are doing in Newcastle. If anybody wants to support Brother Jared and what they're doing over there, I don't know if they're fully supported deputation wise or not. But if anybody watches this and wants to support Brother Jared, wants to be a part of the ministry over there, I'm sure you can reach out to him. What's the best way people can reach out to y'all?
Either on Facebook or they can call me or text 517-403-1369.
Perfect, perfect. You didn't know you was gonna get that plug, but
Nope. It's
I
great.
I didn't. It just came to mind. I was like, it's a perfect opportunity to help support your ministry. But all right,
Amen.
brother. Well, we appreciate you, man. Have a good rest of your day.
Thank you. You too. Appreciate it.
Bye bye.